Good evening and a very warm welcome to your special edition of News with Television Tonga. Tonga This Week, a collection of the top stories during the week. Making headlines, His Majesty King Leopold VI wishes that parliamentarians focus on his people's benefits. Her Majesty Queen Anaspa will receive medical checkup from the Pacific Partnership 2013. More than half of the government's budget estimates for the new financial year have passed by the whole House Committee. And Pacific Partnership assistance to Tonga ends on Friday. These and more stories later on in this bulletin. I'm Fatai Whainga'a with your news for tonight. His Majesty King Leopold VI wishes that parliamentarians focus on his people's benefits, especially those who are trying to make a living. That's according to Ewa's Noble's representative Lord Nuku and the People's representative of Tonga Tapu 9, Fali Situpo, during deliberations in response to the Speaker and members of the House after presenting the Legislative Assembly's response to His Majesty's address from the throne when he officially opened Parliament's ordinary session for 2013. Kalaini Tonglava reports.
Tonga Tapu 9 Representative Fali Stupo in his report to the House says the work is complete and it pleases His Majesty. He says it was clear from His Majesty's address that he was envisage a parliament that will help his people. Tonga Tapu 9 Representative also emphasized His Majesty highlights the high tax applied to the people, leaving them no choice, especially if they're running a business. He also explains His Majesty's interest to boost the education sector in Tonga, extracting a clear example from Thailand. Thailand's tuition fees for 3 years is equivalent to 1 year tuition fees in Australia. His Majesty also highlighted the importance of reducing school fees in Tonga, prioritizing his people's need. The Speaker of the House thanked the representatives for completing this important task. For Television Tonga News, I'm Kalolaine Tonglava.
Their Majesties officiated a special reception hosted by the Japanese ambassador to Tonga, Dr. Katsujiko Hamuro, welcoming personnel that was in Tonga under the Pacific Partnership 2013. This is through partnership with the Tonga Defence Force.
Their Majesties King Leopold VI and Queen Anaspa were officiating events. Speaking on behalf of the Tongan government, the Prime Minister, Lord Tuivakano, conveyed the government's most sincere gratitude for this successful mission.
This is only one testimony of many more. In the past and in the future, that demonstrate the friendly and multilateral cooperation between regional governments, military forces, and humanitarian and non-government organizations to strengthen disaster preparedness in our region, while providing humanitarian, medical, dental, and engineering assistance, building relationships and fostering cultural and security ties. May our good Lord continue to guide and bless you all. Thank you, Malo Abito.
Including in their assistance program were aid programs towards the local primary schools, villages, and the health sector. The Japanese ambassador, His Excellency Dr. Katsujiko Hamuro, spoke of the importance of working together to withstand many challenges in Tonga.
This exercise makes members from different countries and different backgrounds work together as a team. Such exercise would help us to work effectively, especially in the complex emergency situations. Taking this opportunity, I also appreciate US's effort to lead and continue this kind of initiative of a multilateral exercise up to today. Last but not least, I hope that each of the participants, teams, and countries will cultivate friendships in Tonga. That is a strong foundation of mutual trust and understanding among countries. It is said that one can rely on good faith
He also proposes a toast in honor of their Majesties and the success of the Pacific Partnership 2013 mission, together with the relationship of the three countries of Japan, America, and Tonga. However, the mission commander of the Pacific Partnership 2013, Commodore Wallace Lovely, highlights that their relationship with Japan exists for many years, and it has been a beacon of democracy, cooperation, and hope.
True friends are not easy to come by. They are earned through trust, commitment, selflessness, and empathy. We are fortunate to count Japan and the Kingdom of Tonga as our friends. As we serve side by side each day in Pacific Partnership 2013, it is reminiscent of our service together as members of the Coalition of the Willing in Iraq.
Taking part in this program were soldiers from the Japanese Defense Force. Also present at the reception was the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, Lord Fafanua, diplomatic corps, and many guests.
Her Majesty Queen Anaspau'u this week officiates at the Kolowai Health Centre with her people from the Western District to receive medical checkup thanks to the Pacific Partnership 2013.
Her Majesty Queen Anaspau'u officiating at the health program in Kolowai. She also partakes in a medical checkup from Lieutenant Commander Johnny Cosby. Her Majesty also receives a special gift from the team. Sister Fusikaha of the Ministry of Health says this is part of Her Majesty's conveying her support of her people and the visiting team. The doctors and nurses under this program also provide health services to the locals, including eyes checkup and health advice. The presence of Her Majesty is to witness the good work carried out by the team and to thank those who are willing to help the locals for free. She was also excited about this work and thanked those who make use of it. This is a long line of queue with more than 100 people waiting, anticipating to be part of this assistance since 7 in the morning. It includes children up to adults. The officer in charge of the team in Kolowai, Lieutenant Commander Goto, says they are happy to lend a helping hand to those who needs it.
And we're here to bring some medical care to our friends here at Tonga, and we are seeing many patients. We're helping people with glasses, and some at the site here we're doing medical care and glasses, and at the Nuku Nuku site they're doing dental care.
Same work is carried out to the eastern side of health centers with help from the nurses of Waiala Hospital. This program is under Tonga and the U.S. Defense Forces Partnership program called the Pacific Partnership 2013. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sin Lato.
Her Royal Highness Princess Pilolevatuita was the guest of honor at Tubo High School's first day of its Golden Jubilee celebration. Princess Pilolevu officiates at the ex-students' roll calls and call upon the ex-students to become a light that enlighten others. The patron of Tubo High School's ex-students, Her Royal Highness Princess Pilolevatuita, leading the ex-students' parade in Nuku'alofa, heading to the Centenary Church for their roll calls. In her remarks, she says that this celebration is a huge event, marking many accomplishments from various hardships and challenges faced in past years. I urge you all ex-students to become a beacon in life, a light that has enlightened others, but most importantly to thank the Heavenly Father for His many blessings upon us. The school's celebration starts with the ex-students' parade from the Tubo Tertiary Institute compound in Fasimoyafi to the Centenary Church in Sayone. Following Her Highness was the President of the Free Wesleyan Church of Tonga, Reverend Dr. Ahio, Secretary of the Church, Reverend Dr. David Tahavea, church leaders, and many ex-students. The program also marked Tubo Tertiary Institute Research ABAC launching their book, History of Tonga, and others. Ex-students from overseas and the outer islands are in Nuku'alofa to join the celebration. The Honourable Prime Minister Lord Diverano spoke of the government's plan, saying it aims at helping the people and the country. This is in regards to some of the agendas on the 2013-2014 budget estimates. Deliberations continued with discussions of the government's portfolio's budget estimate for the next financial year.
The Honourable Prime Minister told members of the House that some of the private sectors have increased its contribution to Tonga's economic activities, especially the tourism sector. He also was optimistic that as soon as many infrastructure in Nuku'alofa completes, it will help boost Tonga's economy. He was referring to the fiber optic cable, which he believes can open doors for many opportunities for the country to recover the economy. The Prime Minister also spoke of the benefits that Tonga will gain if renovation work to the airports continues, together with development operations of the renewable energy sector. The Prime Minister believes if the cost of electricity tariff rate is reduced, then more business would want to invest in Tonga. He also spoke of the current negotiations with the Russian government in regards to establishing of an oil supply station in order to distribute oil to the rest of the Pacific countries. The purpose of this project is to reduce the prices of oil because it is one of the most important factors required for many operations. Also, parts of government's plans are the operations of the MV Tonga Ofa. The vessel could be used for the shipment of goods from Tonga to regional countries. The Prime Minister was also concerned with the 160 pa'anga reserves that banks are holding in, which the people are reluctant to loan from because of high interest rates. The Honourable Prime Minister added that the Reserve Bank's profits are received from the foreign reserves and also other fees from other organisations using their offers, which are beneficial for them but not to the public in general. The Prime Minister said the Reserve Bank is the liquidator of other commercial banks and the correct procedure are for them to monitor the problem because the authority on this matter is not under the Legislative Assembly nor the government as they have their own working policies on this issue. Lord Tuivakano also spoke of the operations with the World Bank regarding the Development Bank if they can increase or extend the commercial operations and somehow combine all the money of the country which can be used locally for the development of the kingdom and also leaving the money in Tonga and not to invest it overseas. Meanwhile, work is currently underway at the Dateline Hotel, which is the second phase aiming at enhancing and developing the tourism sector. He also spoke of the importance of continuing the assistance to local growers and fishermen because for many years they have been the backbone of injecting money to the country's economy. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sin Latu.
The Committee of the Whole House has passed budget estimates for 14 government ministries for the new financial year 2013-2014, while House Committee was able to pass more than half of a total of 22 budget estimates within a day, which was on Thursday night. It includes the budget estimates for the Palace Office with about 5 million pa'anga, about 4 million pa'anga for the Legislative Assembly, Audit Office with more than 1 million pa'anga, about 200,000 pa'anga for the Commissioner of Public Relations, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade with about 9 million pa'anga, more than 16 million pa'anga for the Prime Minister's Office, Public Service Commission with about 700,000 pa'anga, about 9 million pa'anga for the Ministry of Revenue Services, more than 2 million pa'anga for the Ministry of Public Enterprises, about 13 million pa'anga for the Ministry of Commerce, Tourism and Labour, Ministry of Health with more than 31 million pa'anga, more than 4 million pa'anga to the Ministry of Justice, and about 3 million pa'anga for the Office of the Attorney General. The two top priority sectors are the Ministries of Health and Education and Training, where more than half of the budget estimates for 2013-2014 goes to them. The Ministry of Education and Training was allocated with 47 million pa'anga and more than 31 million pa'anga for health. The budget estimates for the Ministry of Education and Training, together with other 7 ministries, are scheduled to be discussed in Parliament early next week. The People's Representative of Hapai number 13, Uli Dewata, is still absent from the House based on medical grounds, and despite his prolonged absence, Mr. Wata is still fully entitled to all parliamentary benefits as stipulated by law. The MP for Hapai 13 has been absent on medical grounds since last August. This is according to the Speaker of the House, Lord Fafanua. All the MPs are entitled to their benefits from the House within 12 months of being absent on medical grounds. These also apply to the People's Representative of Hapai Constituency 13. The cost for his medical treatment overseas were also covered under his parliamentary privileges. This is one of the facts that contribute to the difficulties we face in our current budget. He also explained on where these matters stand when complying with the Tongan law. If a member is absent for more than 12 months, his parliamentary seat will automatically become vacant. But on the Hapai's MP case, he still has more time to be absent from the parliament's deliberations. The Hapai constituency 13 covers 21 islands and villages from the Otomomoa, Lulunga and other islands. The Speaker was questioned regarding the roles of the MPs in voicing the needs of the people they represent. Mr. Wata has been missing out from several discussions on issues that are important for the people. The former Speaker of Parliament, Lord Lasike, claims $50 million to be paid from the government of Tonga. The estate holder was convicted last year for possession of .22 ammunition, was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment at the Supreme Court. He then appealed to the Court of Appeal last October and was accepted.
Lord Lasike told Radio Tonga and Television Tonga News the claims are for the damages of his reputation, his relationship with other nobles, damages to his family and others. He says the government has given him a deed of statement, but he's not satisfied with it. He says such deed will contribute to loss of his benefits. Meanwhile, government told Radio and Television Tonga News work is underway on this matter. Solicitor General Aminiasi Kefu says it is true that a deed of settlement has been issued to Lord Lasike, including some of the legal conditions. He continues saying government is waiting for Lord Lasike's response. But Lord Lasike says he will take the Tongan government to court and claims this sum. He adds he has not decided a legal counsel yet until he completes his legal investigation on similar matters in previous years. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sinlatu.
The European Union, EU, still withholds about £14.5 million grant to Tonga until government submits required information to the Union. In an interview with the Honourable Minister of Finance and National Planning, Lisete Akolo, he says government is yet to complete all requirements under the grant, including submission of a plan on energy efficiency in Tonga. The Honourable Minister says the delay was due to a shortfall by one of the public enterprises to complete the work. This is the normal procedure for all aid money given to the government by any of its donor partners. So Tonga has not completed the requirement in relates to a plan on the issue of energy. This is referred to as policy metrics, where the recipient and a donor agreed upon certain circumstances before dispatching the aid money. However, he says the government is committed to complete the required work for submission to the EU. The grant money is scheduled to be paid to the government over the next 3 financial years. Tonga has taken one step forward to achieve its goal on reducing reliance on the use of oil for electricity by 50% in its Millennium Development Goal. Honourable Prime Minister last week commissioned the first wind turbine of its kind in the kingdom.
The Honourable Prime Minister Lord Tuivakano as he commissioned the first wind turbine at the village of Nakolo. This is the first ever energy supply from the wind to be established in Tonga. In his remarks, Design and Planning Manager Setitaya Jen expressed how happy they are that this project completes.
Today we are able to see, we're able to touch, and validate the wind generation as viable here in the kingdom, which brings us another step closer in lessening our reliance on diesel and working towards the goal set by the government of Tonga and captured through the Tonga Energy Roadmap of 50% renewable energy.
He says the project has achieved one of its aims, that is for the team to have new experience, build capacity and to maintain the new technology. They hope that this wind turbine can be set up in other villages.
Prime Minister, as we move into the future of power generation, today marks a milestone for Tonga Power and in the development of wind generation in the kingdom. The only way to go now is forward with the wind. We are right now waiting for a proposal for another 4 turbine units and an option to secure low-interest funding from the Government of England.
Present at the ceremony was Lord Luani, the Deputy Prime Minister, Honourable Samuel Waipulu, other ministers of the Crown, government leaders and many guests. About 23 homes will benefit from the wind turbine project. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sinlatu.
The co-publishers of the newly published New Toptapu Tsunami book have presented the first 150 publications to the Ministry of Education and Training. These books were presented by representatives from the Tonga Broadcasting Commission and the International Tsunami Information Centre to the Director of Education and Training, Emily Povalo.
Representatives of the co-publishers of the Niuatoptapu Tsunami book, Lady Tuna Fialakepa, who's a member of the Tonga Broadcasting Commission Board of Directors, and a representative of the International Tsunami Information Centre, ITIC, presenting the Director of Education, Emily Povalo, with the first publication of the Tsunami book. In a ceremony today to mark the presentation of these books, Lady Tuna Fialakepa highlighted the important content in these books as they relate directly to the experiences of survivors who were able to escape the disaster in 2009.
The book which is to be presented today is a collection of first-hand accounts imbued with emotions. In sharing their experiences, we are reminded of our own mortalities in the face of overwhelming natural events. We are humbled by our inadequacies on situations we have little or no control over. We are encouraged by reading stories from those who have been there. This book offers educational, awareness-raising materials, and we are now equipped with better understanding of tsunamis, knowledge of what to do to minimize risk to our safety, healthy respect for nature.
During the program, Brian Yanagi from the ITIC spoke of the vital information that compiles up to make the book.
In all, the South Pacific tsunami, there were 190 people, over 190 people were killed. In American Samoa, and in Tonga, where 9 deaths occurred. Although the South Pacific earthquake and tsunami of September 2009 will be remembered by those who experienced the event, as time and generations pass on, the details and the lessons learned can be lost. In order to document and historically preserve the event, the Tonga Broadcasting Commission deployed a courageous television crew shortly after the disaster, and the 4-year effort to compile these stories.
Also taking part in putting together this Niuatoptapu Tsunami book was Mary Lynn Fonua from the Vava'o Press. During the special presentation program, Mrs. Fonua said that the book provides a clear message, both in English and Tongan version, of the real stories told by the survivors of Niuatoptapu.
What happened in Niuatoptapu has all the elements of a great Tongan drama, a tragedy. But this is a true story with real people and some exceptional people. The survivors' accounts describe not only the disaster, but tell of great heroism and self-sacrifice, of young and old risking their own lives to save or to comfort others, as well as some who made wrong choices and had lucky escapes in the face of danger. The work in this book reveals the tragic consequences of the tsunami on Tonga's most isolated community. The voices of the Niuatoptapu people are very important, and their shared experiences hold an important message for all of us who live on these islands above the Tonga Trench.
Meanwhile, the Director of Education and Training, Emily Povalo, thanked both the co-publishers and people involved in this book project for this generous donation.
These books, the Niuatoptapu Tsunami book and its Tongan version, Niuatoptapu Peaukulo books, will help us all to be aware of the impact of earthquakes and to be prepared for the aftermaths which normally result in tsunami of various heights and forces. The knowledge and skills will prepare us with understanding and confidence on how to react to the commands of nature that we cannot control. We only have to learn how to handle the impacts, and with that we can be prepared to save our lives and the lives of our loved ones.
The content of the book were taken directly from the interviews carried out by Anau Fonokalafi and Ando, a Japanese volunteer who traveled to Niua Toptapu to put together a documentary after the 2009 tsunami. The book project also involved an artist, Sakimi Makafinau, who illustrated a clear picture relevant to people's perceptions and their real storytelling about the truth of the disaster day. Also present at the program was a member of the Board of Directors of TBC, Reverend Dr. Sota Mehavea, Director of National Emergency Management Office NEMO, Leven Aho, representative from Pacific Partnership, and also the General Manager and staff of the Tonga Broadcasting Commission. Reporting for Television Tonga News, I'm Kalolaine Tonglava.
The government of New Zealand still withholds its 5.2 million pa'anga grant to Tonga's tourism sector since last year. This is due to several agendas Tonga needs to address before accessing the fund. New Zealand's move is due to Tonga's shortfall to meet requirements agreed under this aid program. This is according to the Honourable Minister of Finance and National Planning, Lisate Akolo, in an interview with Radio and Television Tonga. New Zealand identified Tonga's problem under this aid money, which includes the manipulation of tourists through its advertise and promotion program. But when tourists arrive Tonga, they're not satisfied with the services provided, such as the flight services. However, when work is complete towards this requirement, New Zealand will then release the fund for Tonga. The Minister says the work is underway with the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Trade and Labour, Dr. William Latu, to ensure that requirements are met. This aid money is for the 2011-2014 financial year. However, the Honourable Minister of Commerce, Tourism and Labour, Dr. William Latu, says he was not satisfied with New Zealand government withholding its 5.2 million pa'anga fund for Tonga's tourism sector.
The Tourism Minister, Dr. William Latu, revealed this to Television Tonga News and says he had already signed an agreement with New Zealand's High Commissioner regarding this assistance fund from the Government of New Zealand towards Tonga. The agreement with New Zealand was signed in December between myself and the New Zealand High Commissioner in Tonga. The agreement for the campaign to begin in May and June, and now they're holding the funds. Therefore, the government have to take actions. To myself, I am dissatisfied with New Zealand holding back its funds because their reasons does not coincide with the ministry's authority. At present, campaigning of Tonga in Auckland, New Zealand continues. However, it is funded by the Tongan government. Parts of the campaigning includes posters and billboards established in central Auckland and some of the buses running in the city. The campaign has started in New Zealand, but it could have been bigger if New Zealand committed its funds towards Tonga. The tourism sector is a good form of income for the Kingdom of Tonga. For Television Tonga News, I'm Kalolaine Tonglava.
The Honourable Minister of Internal Affairs, Lord Vaea, launched the Ola Oifanua 2013 program. This aimed at training the locals to get the right skills on fruit picking program in overseas countries. Trainers will be trained on this program, later shared with the local people. These are the locals that are willing to take up this 12 weeks training program. Attending the ceremony was Lord Duhateho, Diplomatic Corps, and many guests. Lord Vaea, in his inaugural speech, says this is important to help develop skills of temporary workers that are usually taking up the fruit-picking program in Australia and New Zealand.
Tonga has been sending workers to New Zealand under the RSE scheme, beginning with 805 in 2007, 1,355 in 2008, 1,142 in 2009, 1,411 in 2010, 1,398 in 2011, and approximately 1,560 in 2012. In 2009, the Tongan seasonal worker in the RSE scheme earned an average of New Zealand dollars 12,970 for the season. The length of the season ranged from 3 to 7 months, with those spending longer definitely earning more than the average wages. When multiplied by the number of Tongan workers, 1124 or 1,224, sent to New Zealand in 2009, it works out to a total income of almost 15 million New Zealand dollars for their families, and not to mention for Tonga's economy.
Ola Whanua program is under the helm of the primary ITO of New Zealand. The program manager says this aimed at upgrading the level of professional labour in Tonga and to also strengthen the kingdom's ties with New Zealand.
The purpose of this project is to contribute to the strengthening of Pacific partnerships through the RSE scheme and through working with governments across the Pacific by piloting a program that contains at its very core industry training in horticulture that leads to national qualifications that are recognised across New Zealand and the world. The organisation I represent is the primary ITO. This organisation is the lead agency of this project. Why? The role of industry training organisations in New Zealand is to arrange training, to design qualifications, and to provide leadership between industry and government on training needs. This program, therefore, is using all the roles of the ITO, and Ola Whanua has come out of those roles.
50 applicants applied for this program, but only 20 were accepted, including town officers and others. The Ministry of Public Enterprises receives Tonga Power's dividend for the 2012-2013 financial years. This totalled at more than 500,000 pa'anga.
The chairman of Tonga Power Board, Carl Santh, presenting Tonga Power Limited dividend to Honourable Fe'ao Vakata. The minister praised the company's hard work, saying they are working together to cut electricity costs and heavy reliance on diesel for distributing electricity to homes. The amount presented this morning is the remaining money from the government's subsidy to electricity, which has been deducted from their total dividend to help reduce electricity bills since the increase in the cost of electricity. This is one of the best companies that has performed outstandingly. Chief Executive Officer of Tonga Power explains more on the company's dividend.
Our total amount was 860,000 pāinga, of which today we paid 524,000, which is the remaining amount. So in total we've actually paid government just on 1.3 million pāinga in tax and in dividends for the year.
The chairman of the board says they've put forward projects to the government, hoping it will reduce electricity costs. We are working together with the minister and his CEO, Siasi Sovaleni, to push for the implementation of renewable energy from the sun and wind. We've also submitted project proposals since February this year, estimated to the tune of 50 to 60 million pa'anga. If the government approves these projects, electricity costs will decrease by 20 cents per kilowatt.
The members of the Committee of the Whole House passes the 12 million estimates of the Ministry of Commercial, Tourism and Labour. This is according to the Minister of the respective portfolio, Dr. Viliamilato. The 12 million estimates contains the 5.2 million pa'anga that the New Zealand government pledged to donate for the tourism sector in Tonga. This is despite New Zealand government still withholds the fund until Tonga met the requirements outlined under the agreement. The Honourable Minister says the 12 million pa'anga estimates is for the 2013-2014 financial years. There was a slight increase on this estimate. 1 million pa'anga has been put aside to promote manufacturing of local product and buying Tonga-made. The minister also urges the people not to rely on imported goods because it led to unbalanced trade. This means that more income is lost to importing products rather than exporting of local-made products. This estimate will also fund operation of a new Tonga Tourism Authority that was set up under the Tourism Act 2012. The board's first meeting will be next week. Tonga Tourism Authority Board was set up as a campaign body for Tonga's tourism sector. The electricity cost to the customers can be dropped by 30 seniti per kilowatt if the Tongan government approved to work together with the American electricity supplier Clean Energy Solution. Discussions with the American company was held when the Honourable Minister visits the US together with officers from the Tonga Power Limited seeking alternatives to help reduce electricity costs and heavy reliance on fuel. This is according to Honourable Fe'a Wakatai in an interview with Radio and Television Tonga on development works towards renewable energy. This company's works are based on plastic, paper and wood timber. If Tonga approve this company, its officials will then visit Tonga next year. The current electricity cost is more than 80 cents per kilowatt, but if this company introduces this new initiative, it will help reduce electricity costs. This is part of the government's initiative to reduce reliance on fuel by 50% in 2020. All members of the Committee of the Whole House have unanimously agreed to pass the budget estimate for the Palace Office, which is estimated at 4,473,000 pa'anga for 2013-2014.
The sources of funds for the Palace Office budget estimate are from the government with more than 4 million pa'anga and about 250,000 pa'anga from the Trust Fund. The usual highest amount of the expenses under these estimates are the salaries of the staff. It is estimated at more than 2 million pa'anga divided for the salaries of the permanent staff at the Palace Office for the 2013-2014 financial year. According to these estimates for the Palace Office, on the new financial year, the second largest expenses on the list is the travel and communication. This is estimated at 988,000 pa'anga, and the remaining amount in the budget for financing the operations expenses of the office. Meanwhile, after the whole committee unanimously passed the estimate allocated for the Palace Office 2013-2014, they continued on their discussions on the budget estimate of the Legislative Assembly. It was clear from the budget estimation for the House, it has slightly dropped by 96,000 pa'anga from what the House has requested for the new financial year. The Speaker of the House, Lord Fafanua, says he is concerned with the budget estimate available for the House for the 2013-2014 financial year because of the multiple obligations of the House. He added there was a supplementary budget requested for the current financial year as they have to complete their work and other expenses. Meanwhile, issues were raised during the deliberations regarding the current budget estimate for the House as they were concerned with the medical expenses of the Hawaii 13 People's Representative to Parliament.
The interest rates applied by the banks to its loans are too high and is hard to be paid by individuals. This led to loss of businesses and properties which are later neglected and damaged. The Honourable Minister of Finance and National Planning, Lisate Akolo, in an interview with Radio and Television Tonga, says talks have been carried out with the banks, yet they refuse to do so. Negotiations with the bank include a request to write off parts of any outstanding loan that cannot be paid, but they refuse to do so. The government also seek assistance from the World Bank to help pay off outstanding loans, but they did not accept it. In the meantime, we understand that the banks obtained about 140 million pa'anga that they cannot lend out to public. But this is because they believe that the economy still needs recovery, where people cannot pay back their loan if this multi-million pa'anga is accessible for lenders. Meanwhile, the government seek help from the National Reserve Bank of Tonga on this matter, but the National Reserve Bank of Tonga clarifies they cannot do anything about it as stipulated by law. We've noticed the big differences between the interest rates applied to the loan and the interest rates applied to the people's deposits in the bank. This is due to the high rates applied to the loan interest, while the rates applied to the deposits is too low. Yet the bank did not wish to make changes to its current policy. The Honourable Minister adds they are still looking for ways to minimise the problem. 2 persons have been charged for allegedly trying to legally insert Asian names into 2 Tongan passports. Oto Tuitupo Falalo has been charged with fraudulent conversion of a government property, while Sofia Wilalauka of Hakame has been charged with attempting to falsify a document.
Betulisa appeared in the magistrate court, but the court adjourned the case so she could reappear together with Oto Tuitupo in the same court next week. In Radio Tonga's news magazine program last Saturday, Deputy Police Commissioner Unga Fa'awa says Betulisa was arrested last Monday. She tried to insert 2 Asian names onto Tongan passports. This was carried out in one of the computer cafes in town. This was an illegal action to a plain passport, but evidence have proved that it was a verified Tongan passport ready to be issued. It was alleged that Otto gave the passport to Betulisa. Otto was arrested on Friday. Police investigation is continuing, focusing on the likelihood that bribery was involved in the process. The 2 accused are being released on bail on 1,000 pa'anga surety each. Both their passports have been surrendered to the court.
The Pacific Partnership 2013 humanitarian aid to Tonga ends on Friday. A special ceremony was held at the Atele Government Primary School to mark the completion of this program, together with the completion of the renovation work towards 4 primary schools in Tongatapo. This is the 3rd time Tonga partakes in this program.
The Honourable Prime Minister Lotu Ivakano, the estate holder of Hateho, Lotu Hateho, and Deputy Mission Commander of the Pacific Partnership 2013, Group Commander Darren Webb, marks the completion of the Pacific Partnership to Tonga together with works at the Atele Primary School. Similar works was also carried out to the primary schools at Lapaha, Hafa and Malapo. The principals of these schools showed their appreciation through presenting of gifts to Captain Darren Webb. Also present at the special event was the Speaker of the House, Lord Fa'afanua, Deputy Prime Minister, Honourable Sami Waipulu, Ministers of the Crown, Nobles of the Realm, Diplomatic Corps, Brigadier General Tauaika Ta'atu, representatives from different organizations that were fortunate from this aid program and others. In her opening remarks, Minister of Education and Training, Honourable Dr. Ana Taufi'ulungaki, says they are very grateful for these assistance as the ministry cannot stand alone to deliver what's best for the education sector in Tonga.
One of the policy priority focus areas in the ministry's Tonga Education Lakalaka Policy Framework is quality teaching and learning environments, which include physical facilities in schools. However, the ministry does not have the financial resources to construct new buildings or to adequately maintain existing facilities to a level that is conducive to teaching and learning. But with the assistance of donor and development partners such as Australia, New Zealand, Japan and China, the World Bank and of course Pacific Partnership, we are able to build new facilities and renovate our most needy schools.
Also fortunate of this similar assistance were schools in the outer islands of Ha'apai in 2009, Vava'u and the Tuniwas in 2011. Representing the Pacific Partnership 2013 team, Group Captain Darren Webb thanked the local people for their hospitality and support since day one.
Pacific Partnership is a complex mission. It has many, many moving parts, but actually fundamentally the goals are quite simple, and that is to deliver regional assistance and in doing so improve understanding of our environment and understanding of each other. That includes understanding how to work in different climates, understanding the topography, understanding the infrastructure, what the civilian and military capabilities of each of those host nations might be.
While in Tonga, the team have conducted renovation works in schools, helping the health sector and assisting people in the communities, among others. For Television Tonga News, I'm Sinla Tu.
And that ends your special edition of News with Tonga this week. I'm Fatai Whainga'a. Have a pleasant evening.